All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a close, objective look at a massive story that is completely dominating the headlines. We're going to map out the staggering financial gains of the president directly against his administration's policy actions. We want to see what the receipts actually show, separating the documented facts from all the unproven, partisan noise. We're kicking things off with a baseline fact that is just staggering. According to the president's own federal disclosure, which was submitted to the Office of Government Ethics, he reported over $1.4 billion in crypto income for the year 2025 alone. I mean, $1.4 billion in a single year. It's a massive number, and it absolutely sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. To unpack all of this without the usual yelling, here's our roadmap. We'll cover the billion-dollar baseline, two competing frames, tracking the receipts, the missing quid pro quo, and finally, a matter of norms. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The billion-dollar baseline. Based on an independent Reuters analysis of those government filings, this incredible $1.4 billion figure breaks down in a pretty fascinating way. It isn't just one giant lump sum. The wealth primarily stems from about $800 million tied to the family's crypto venture, World Liberty Financial, and another jaw-dropping $635 million coming from meme coins. Think about that for a second. By his own filings, someone who built his entire empire on traditional real estate has fundamentally shifted into primarily being a crypto earner. Moving to part 2, two competing frames. When you weigh these massive earnings against the administration's push to deregulate crypto, the public debate basically splits down the middle into two very distinct camps. First, there's the corruption frame. Argued by watchdog groups and political opponents, this thesis says that holding massive active interests in an industry your own administration regulates is a clear conflict of interest, essentially saying the government is being run for private gain. On the flip side, you have the no-conflict frame, which is championed by the White House. They argue the president is legally exempt from conflict of interest laws, the assets are put away in a trust managed by his kids, and his policies are purely about the public good, like making America the crypto capital of the world. Two totally different ways of looking at the exact same reality. Which brings us to part 3, tracking the receipts. If we set the political rhetoric aside, act like forensic accountants, and just track the timeline overlaps, we find our first undeniable receipt. On July 18, 2025, the president signed the Genius Act, which created the very first federal regulatory framework for stablecoins. But at the exact moment he signed it, he held a massive stake. We're talking 38 to 40% in World Liberty Financial, a stablecoin issuer. And here's the real kicker. While Congress banned its own members from profiting off crypto ventures in that same bill, they explicitly exempted the presidency from its ethics ban. So he literally wrote the rules for a market he owned a huge piece of. Right around that same time, we saw some major regulatory shifts happen alongside this financial windfall. The SEC dropped its massive lawsuit against the crypto exchange Binance. They also paused a case against Justin Sun, a top token holder who famously scored a private presidential dinner. Oh, and the Justice Department completely disbanded its National Crypto Enforcement Unit. These aren't rumors, folks. They are documented facts on the public record. Then there's the pretty striking sequence of events involving Binance. Step 1. Binance provides the essential software to launch the family's World Liberty crypto venture. Step 2. An Abu Dhabi state fund uses World Liberty's stablecoin to settle a massive $2 billion deal, vaulting the venture into the big leagues. And Step 3. Subsequently, the Binance founder, Changpeng Zhao, receives a full and unconditional presidential pardon. And this pattern isn't just limited to crypto. Let's look at the critical minerals sector. On October 31st, a firm partly owned by the president's sons secured a 20% stake in an entity tied to a Kazakhstan tungsten project. Literally 6 days later, on November 6th, the U.S. signed an agreement signaling up to $1.6 billion in massive federal financing for that exact same effort. Add international actions to the mix, too. The Pentagon recently accepted a stunning $400 million Boeing 747, basically a flying palace, from Qatar as an unconditional donation meant for the Air Force and ultimately the Presidential Library Foundation. Keep in mind, this is happening with a country the president directly sets foreign policy toward, while his family brand is simultaneously expanding its lucrative real estate footprint across the Middle East. This leads us right into part 4, the missing quid pro quo. With all these documented overlaps perfectly laid out in front of us, we have to talk about the biggest tension in this entire explainer. Look at this juxtaposition. You have the UAE's MGX fund stepping up to capitalize the family's crypto venture with a $2 billion deal. Meanwhile, the US authorizes the export of highly restricted advanced AI chips to a UAE firm called G42. The catch? The same man, Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed, chairs both entities. It practically writes a perfect chips for crypto causal story, doesn't it? But here is the reality check. The coincidences are stacked incredibly high. However, as Harvard ethics scholar Lawrence Lessig points out, direct, explicit evidence of a quid pro quo, a literal smoking gun tying a specific payment to a specific policy choice, simply does not exist on the public record. There is zero proof of a bribe. Lessig notes that expecting explicit structural proof might be naive, but pretending the loop is fully closed and a bribe is proven is intellectually dishonest. Just as pretending this whole pattern doesn't exist is, well, totally blind. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, A Matter of Norms. This massive gap between perfectly documented coincidences and totally unproven causality leaves us with one big question. How is this even allowed? Well, almost everything we've looked at today is entirely legal. The reason? 18 U.S.C. 208. That's the federal statute that makes it a crime for government officials to act on matters where they hold a financial stake. But there's a massive asterisk right there in the law. The president is uniquely and entirely exempt. For decades, presidents just acted as if the law applied to them anyway, but, that was really just a norm. And the administration knows this perfectly well. The White House points to this explicit legal exemption, combined with the total lack of a proven bribe, to argue there are zero conflicts of interest whatsoever. As their spokesperson boldly stated on the record, neither the president nor his family has ever engaged or will ever engage in conflicts of interest. But that relies on a very strictly criminal definition. Objectively, in plain English, a conflict of interest is a structural condition. It is not a criminal verdict. It exists the very second someone stands to gain privately from a public choice they're making, regardless of whether a court ever proves a bribe. By that standard, these conflicts aren't just allegations, they are documented facts. So, moving forward, we really need to keep our eyes on the horizon. Watch for the upcoming 2026 financial disclosures. Will this crypto income become the new baseline? Keep an eye out for unsealed records from the SEC or DOJ cases, any future crypto ethics legislation, the final approvals on that Kazakhstan financing, and ongoing court battles over foreign gifts. These are the spaces that will finally show us if any new documents close the causal loop or if it all remains tantalizingly circumstantial. Because no law was technically broken, the real question here isn't a legal one for the courts to decide. The guardrail that stood between immense personal profit and federal policy was always just a norm, and that norm is effectively gone. So it really comes down to a choice for all of us. Are we okay with this new baseline, where only the absence of an explicitly proven bribe separates presidential powers from billion-dollar personal gains? Is this what we are willing to accept?